Hello and welcome to The Pickle, brought to you by AC4SA, academic coaching for student athletes, and co-hosted by Ethan O'Day and Jack Sundberg. Here on The Pickle, we discuss with our guests, ranging from coaches to professional athletes, the pickle of all things, academics, sports, recruiting, high school to the pros, you name it, we talk about it. Our goal for the podcast is to give people insight into the sports world and student athletes' perspectives by sharing current and former athletes, educators, and coaches' real-life experiences. Telling story is one of the most powerful means for leaders to influence, teach, and inspire. These stories resonate in our culture, history, and lesson learned. The Pickle brings you these stories of adversity, triumph, failure, and determination to get inspired, to take them to your school, home, life, and court. Listen, learn, share, and enjoy. Today's guest is Nicole Adach from Schenectady, New York. She attended St. Michael's College, where she was a psychology major. On the court, Nicole was a captain and consistently earning all academic honor roll. She was an 1,000-point scorer at St. Michael's, and she continued her passion for psychology and got her master's degree in clinical psych. She concentrated her studies and research on athletic identity and the psychological process that influences how an individual identifies as an athlete throughout his or her development, and how much this impacts the transition out of sport. She is currently a mental skills coach for athletes and a clinical psychologist. Welcome to The Pickle.
We're live, The Pickle Pod. We're back and we're better. Season 2. Super excited for our guest, Nicole Adach. She just got me the last name pronunciation. I've known her for years. She's really done a bunch of really cool things throughout the community. Mental health field with athletes and other clients. Has also been a strength trainer. Worked at her former university in St. Mike's. Was a St. Mike's basketball player for 4 years. Scored 1,000 points. Nicole, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Ethan. Glad to be here.
Nicole, I'm super excited to have you on. Like Ethan said, I think you have a lot of experience, not only being an elite basketball player, but obviously working with a lot of student athletes and just athletes in general. So I'm excited. And I know you're an avid listener of the show, so you know we start off with the rundown, which is just 5 quick questions. So Ethan, take her away.
All right, question number 1. Dinner with one athlete.
One athlete. Well, I would say Kobe Bryant, rest in peace. So I think if I had to choose living athlete, it would be Michael Jordan.
Fair.
I like that.
I like those 2 answers. Number 1 thing on the bucket list.
Honestly, to travel the US more. I feel like this is actually really embarrassing. I haven't been more far west than Ohio. So I need to venture out there. Yeah.
Same.
I gotta get you out there.
Jack has been in his Tacoma all around the country, so he can tell you where to go.
Okay.
Favorite movie of all time?
This one's actually really hard because I'm not a movie buff. I just saw I like Good Will Hunting. I just saw Forrest Gump for the first time, which you would be really ashamed of. I know. But I like
Ethan's favorite.
I was trying to think of a good movie. Good Will Hunting is a good one. It's kind of like stereotypical therapist likes Good Will Hunting, but I like it.
I think Good Will Hunting or Forrest Gump has to be in everyone's top 5.
Forrest Gump is
absolutely.
my
I
top
like
5.
that answer. How do you start your day every morning?
I get up, I drink a hot water with lemon, I journal, I exercise, I drink a lot of coffee, and I go to work. But hot water, lemon, journaling, and exercise, first 3 things.
I have heard
Awesome.
that the hot water with lemon is good for the gut.
It is. It's like Drano and a pipe cleaner, so like the lemon rind actually has a property in it called limonene, and it detoxes your body, so it allows you to absorb nutrients for the day. So the hot water is like the Drano, and the lemon rind is like the pipe cleaner. So I'm cleaning my system out every morning.
Love it. All right, last one here. We almost got through it. First quote that comes to mind.
If nothing changes, nothing changes.
If nothing changes, nothing changes.
I mean, it's pretty true.
Got to do different things to get different results. That's how I read that.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Good job, Ethan.
I think that's good. All right. That is the rundown. We can get right into this here, Jack, if you want to start us off.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, we'll just sort of dive right in. Talk a little bit just about your journey. I mean, obviously, St. Mike's, you had a great career, 1,000-point scorer, and then you go into becoming a mental skills coach, working with a lot of athletes. What was that transition like? You know, was it something always you wanted to do? Did you have experiences at St. Mike's where you're like, oh man, I can really help student athletes? Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I definitely didn't plan for this. I was like the athlete who just thought I'd always play sports. Like I didn't think of next steps. So my identity was so wrapped up in athletics, which I think, you know, Ethan, we've talked about this, and I'm sure Jack, you can understand. And so when I realized I wasn't playing professionally as an adult, I went to grad school to be a clinical psychologist at St. Mike's. And I found myself in this like identity crisis. So I actually studied athletic identity for my thesis, and how athletes experience the transition from being an athlete to not being an athlete at all. And I struggled personally with my mental health, like everything without sport. So I was really passionate about the mental health of athletes. And as I was kind of talking with athletes in this clinical psychology role, I realized that there's a real gap in the opportunities and services available for athletes to actually train their minds. There's one thing to like mention, oh, the mind is important, but it's totally a separate thing to realize how you actually train it. So I just saw this huge void, and it kept like showing up over and over again. So I kind of like carved my own path and just like slowly found a niche. It was kind of a random way to get there, but I just found that I was really bored just doing the mental health counseling work. And every time an athlete came in my office, I'm like, all right, baby, like, let's talk about sport performance. So I found that was my passion for sure. And just my knowledge of, you know, understanding like how athletes define themselves through their sport lens. I feel like I just like found this, like, I don't know, I had like an aha moment where I was like, all right, athletes like need special attention with their mental health, and then in turn need special attention with how to actually train their minds. So I saw a need, and I attacked it.
That's so cool. Yeah, I think, and we've talked a lot about this on the episode, like that whole identity thing is crucial.
Yeah.
And my one follow-up question for that, I'm asking it early because I don't want to forget to ask it. But if you're working with a student athlete, or if you just want to talk to any of our listeners right now, a lot of high school student athletes or college student athletes, like what's one thing that they need to be doing? I know it's hard to only say one, but like one thing they could do daily to like really help you know, take care of themselves from a mental aspect and stay in a good place throughout a season or just in life.
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. It's kind of like a two-part answer, but I'll be brief. So first is just like raising awareness, knowing your own tendencies, knowing how your mind operates. Like I know for me as an athlete, I can say in hindsight, oh, I was totally absorbed in my sport and couldn't see myself beyond that. So when I no longer was an athlete, I got stuck because I'm like, who am I? So I would say like being aware of like how much on that spectrum, how close are you to just defining yourself as an athlete? And then also, I definitely wanted to touch on this in this conversation anyway, but the concept that like you are not your sport, you're not your sport performance. Sport is really just an opportunity to practice being who you are. So you are the hardworking, passionate team member who puts their effort into what they care about. You're not the basketball player, and that's it. You're the person who's playing basketball and developing these like essentially a set of values to live by. So sport really just provides the opportunity to be who you are. I don't know if that makes sense. But
no, that's awesome.
That makes sense to me. And it's how I always looked when I finally clicked. For me, it didn't happen until like after college, but it's like, yeah, you're not your sport. You're a brother, your sister, you're a friend, you're someone else. And whenever I would have a bad game, you know, I would be like, I suck. And then it would carry over into everything else. I was like, I suck at everything. It would just carry over to school, personal life, whatever. And you have to like be able to leave that when you step off the court of the field.
And I will say, like, the athlete in me cringes at that because I'm like, no, performance freaking matters. Like, I want to play well. I want to have a double-double every game. If I don't, then I didn't do my job. But the coach and like the mental health professional in me is like, whoa, if I'm defining myself and my value so much based on this sport, this performance, then like the moment that I have a bad game or a bad play or turnover or whatever it might be, like, I'm destroying my own self-worth in my mind. So it's really dangerous. But I will say the athlete in me still cringes at that idea. So it is hard.
No, I think that's awesome. And I think the set of, like you said, the set of values to live by, like if you look at more of, I'm a hard worker, I'm passionate, I'm determined, it's like when something shifts in your life, say you go from being an athlete to being, an insurance salesman, whatever it is, it's like you just take everything that you've learned through your sport and your life and you just transition it to, whatever's next, which I think is really cool.
Yeah. And my parents always said like, oh, the life lessons will be like, those are going to be the lasting things you remember. And I'm always like, all right, I'm going to go shoot. Like, thanks for the info. Talk to you later. But now as an adult, I'm like, damn, they were right. Like literally all those values, like I learned to be a hard worker and to be passionate, and I still do it every day in my work. So obviously I learned things from my sport, but it's really hard to mentally get there when you're in the middle of playing. And that's why as an athlete, an active athlete, these, especially seniors, like they should be looking at themselves big picture if they're not playing professionally, or professionals as they're kind of planning to retire. Like look at who you are so that when you no longer are playing your sport, you don't feel like you're just a nothing, because you're not.
Absolutely. And that actually sort of transitions into our next question sort of well. Talk a little bit about just you being a student athlete and some things that you found success as a student athlete and some things that you were like, man, I really struggled with this, whether it was freshman year, senior year, just anything that comes to mind.
Yeah, I definitely was really good at like being passionate, totally like engaged in what I was doing. Like I'm pretty fiery. Like when I really care about something, I'm like obsessed with it. So that helped me in sport, but then it also hurt me when I was no longer in the sport. So I was good at like being like a hard worker. Like I don't think any of my teammates would ever say I wasn't a hard worker. I dedicated a lot of my time, went to the gym like more than I probably should have. Honestly, my coach would congratulate me when I didn't go to the gym extra. She'd be like, good job, you rested. So I definitely didn't like change. I didn't train my mind enough. I didn't take enough time to intentionally train my mind. Obviously through hard work and things like that, I became disciplined mentally, but as far as like intentionally practicing being present and intentionally using positive or productive self-talk and visualizing success, like I didn't do that stuff on the side. It just was kind of intertwined with thanks, with my sport. I didn't actually train my mind enough. So as a professional now, I see in athletes I always ask, like, what do you think the number one issue is that I see? And the number one issue I see, whether it's with an athlete or a non-athlete, is this inability for the mind and the body to be in the same place at the same time. Our body knows this conversation right now, but I could mentally be thinking about last night if I had a bad conversation, or tomorrow, oh my God, I have all this stuff to do. So mentally and physically being in the same place at the same time. So that's being mindful, is being present. I didn't do that good enough. So like if I had a bad play, I'd dwell on it. If a ref made a bad call, I'd give him a look until he looked at me back. Like I wasn't able to stay in the present moment. So I actually hurt myself in that way. And I think a lot of that is kind of where I get my like intel with like what I need to help athletes with now. But I guess like the good parts of my performance, I'm talking about all the bad stuff, is that I was able to see like that intentional hard work is absolutely necessary. Like it doesn't happen accidentally. You don't just accidentally become an elite athlete.
Right.
But then taking the time to train your mind is crucial. And I definitely didn't do that well enough.
Right. Now and it's funny, we talk to students all the time. It's like, you just don't accidentally get an A, you just don't accidentally like go in and just like crush your chem exam. Right. It's like everything that you're doing leading up to that moment for sure.
Yeah. And I think the hard work has to transition into the mental health aspect, because it's like, oh yeah, you're taking care of yourself, but it's like just the way you practice for basketball, you got to do it with the mental health stuff and be consistent. And I think that's where a lot of athletes struggle, is they're like, they might meditate a little bit here or there, or be mindful or kind of do that stuff, but it has to be like you have that routine and you're doing it every single day, like you're practicing basketball. And that's how you can get that edge where it helps your performance and just your well-being as a human being. Like it just accumulates over time if you're consistent with it.
Definitely. And it's like, imagine, I always compare it to the body, because athletes tend to understand that the body needs to be trained regularly. Imagine going to the gym once, and you like get a PR in squats and like you don't go back. okay, so now you're sore and that's it. Like that's all that happened. You didn't get better. You need to keep going back over and over and eventually kind of adding layers and, making it more and more challenging for yourself. The same with the mind. Start small, even if it's just picking up a pen and journaling every morning, whatever. You're doing something to kind of get up here, get in your mind, and like doing it consistently. You don't go to the gym once a week and say, that's great. You go like every freaking day. So it's like, I don't know. It's funny how the mind, we just don't see it the same way.
Nope.
Yeah.
Actually, just a real quick side thing too. I used to like ask athletes all the time, like, has anyone here ever been told they're weak? Everyone's like, yeah, definitely. What do you do when you're told you're weak? I go to the gym, I lift weights. What do you do? I do lunges, squats, like deadlifts, pull-ups, whatever. Okay. How many of you have been told you're slow? I was definitely told I was slow. And the first thing I did was ask my dad, hey, put a permanent speed ladder in our basement. And he did. So I was able to practice that. And then I would ask athletes like, how many of you have been told that you need to be more confident? Everyone raises their hand. Okay, what do you do about it?
Mm-hmm.
Like as an athlete, I was told to be faster and I was told to be more confident. I worked on my speed. Confidence, I just like nodded my head in agreement. Yeah, you're right, coach. I do have to be more confident. But it's just odd how we don't look at the mind and the body the same. I think things are changing, but it's just something that we need to be more intentional about for sure.
It's almost like confidence, just like, oh, if I play well, then I'll be confident. It was weird in college. I would have this, reflecting back on it now, if I played well, I would have this weird thing where I'm like, I got a lot of pressure next game to do that again, and I can't let it flop. So it would almost have a negative, and I wish I like knew how to navigate that more. It was a weird mind game that I was playing.
It takes all the control out of your hands. You're like, I hope that the gods are here for me to next week when I have a game again. I better play well. Like it gives you none of the power, which is so crazy.
It's wild. Quick follow up on that. So you kind of touched on it a bit. Is if you, with all the experience you had playing, do you really lean in on that when you're working with student athletes? Like say, oh, like I went through a similar thing, or do you kind of bring a different perspective to it?
Yeah, my filter is always, is this helpful to the client? So if I'm just like boasting about myself, no, I don't share that kind of like, oh, it's a 1,000-point score. I don't think I've ever mentioned that to anyone. I've never said that. But if an athlete's struggling and I feel like they would feel so much more supported and validated knowing that I struggled with the same thing, I'll give a little bit of information here and there. Like I'll disclose a little, but it's not about me. It's about the person I'm sitting with. So, right. But there are so many people in this field who have never played sports. And I'm like, what credibility do you have? So that is something that like really is a pet peeve of mine. So I think I definitely have like the credibility, especially when I was working at St. Mike's, all the athletes are like, oh, she was here. So she literally gets it.
Right.
Yeah. Working with athletes, being an athlete myself, yes, absolutely pull from it all the time.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
There's definitely like a camaraderie around athletes, college athletes, any athletes all around. So it has to make it easier.
Absolutely. What about, obviously you work with a lot of student athletes, and I'm sure a lot of kids come up to you, or maybe they don't, but I'm assuming that they do. And they talk about balancing academics and athletics. Like, oh man, I got a huge paper due Friday, but then I also got a big game Saturday. How do I manage that all? Because it's tough. Being a student athlete is hard, whether it's D3, D1, whether you're at St. Mike's or you're playing, for Gino, it's tough. What is something that you like to talk to your clients about balancing all that? Because I think student athletes would love to get a little insight, from your brain about like, how do I balance it? How do I make it work?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. To be honest, most of the clients I work with, the athletes are the ones who are better at time management because they have to be. You don't have an option. Like you have practice every single day for at least 2 hours, probably more, plus the showering, plus changing, plus, extra, like you're in the gym half your day. And then you have class like everyone else. So you have no choice but to be, again, there's that word intentional. I keep using that word, but you have to be intentional with your time. I am a big visual person. I have said always, like, write out your schedule, like have a calendar in front of you, know what your Monday looks like, know what your Tuesday looks like, where are the holes, fill them in. You can't just like sit around and assume, again, things don't just get done. So being intentional with, like finding the holes in your schedule and filling them. You know, maybe one of those holes needs to be a nap, fine, but fill your schedule with something so that you feel like you're one, in control of your life and your schedule, because it can feel overwhelming if you allow it to feel overwhelming. So
Absolutely.
beginning of the week, being like, people talk about like meal prepping. Okay, just week prep. You don't need to talk about like meals, but like prep for your week. You know, you have a big exam on Friday or a paper due. Don't start Thursday night after practice. You know, between class and practice on Monday, you have a little hole, use it. So definitely like looking at your week big picture and then kind of breaking down the obligations.
Yeah, I think that's such good advice. And just like, you know, if you make a deal with yourself and you write it down that you're going to do that thing the next day, it's not negotiable. You do it. And I think some people get caught in the trap. They're like, oh, I'm going to take care of myself and not, you know, go to the gym today because I need to take care of myself. Well, you might not be taking care of yourself if you're not staying true to your word and doing that, even if you're not feeling like it. Right. And I also think, like, I think we talked about it today, like Instagram post that you had the other day about how, like, if you just have a day where you don't have anything planned, your mind is going to go racing. And if you're not busy doing stuff, especially as a student athlete, like on an off day, you don't have a schedule, it's going to be a tough day for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And I think too, like, you know, I don't want to sound like you need to have every moment of your day planned out or else, like, you're going to be spontaneous here and there. That's fine. But just make sure that, like, you know, luckily athletes know how to follow rules. If you didn't, you wouldn't be at the level you're at. If you're an elite athlete, like, you're following your discipline, you have that ability to be disciplined. So apply it to, not, again, there's that set of values that goes beyond just sport, but apply that passion and that discipline and motivation to things outside of the sport too. Yeah.
Discipline for sure creates freedom, and then you have those days where you can be spontaneous if you're consistently disciplined. But I like that advice a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we work with student athletes all the time, and you know, they're like, oh my gosh, I have all this stuff going on. It's like, and half of them don't even know when it's going on. They're like, I think it's Thursday, you know, and then it's like, well, you know, how much time do you have for the week, you know, to study for that test? And
that's something else too. Actually, you have a team, so you can use external accountability as well. Study halls, whatever.
Absolutely. So you hinted a little bit earlier before when you're talking about your parents, and you're like, you know, all the lessons that you're going to learn in life and through sports, and you're like, oh, okay. Talk a little bit of, you know, because being a student athlete's hard, and a lot of people make a decision, well, you know, if it's this hard, you know, why do it? Because we talk a lot about on the show of the rigors of academics and being a student athlete. It's like, well, why would I even do it? You know, why would I even go play sport in college? Because half the time it's, you know, you're getting maybe a partial scholarship or whatever. So if it's so difficult, you know, why play? And how did, you know, playing basketball, you know, help shape you, change your life and all that?
Yeah. I mean, it goes back to how sport is not who you are, but it helps you become who you are. It's like that old John Wooden quote, like, what is it? Sport doesn't build character, it reveals it. And it's true. My dad used to always tell me that too. Again, the parent quotes, I'm like, but it's so true. And like, for me with sport, first of all, that question should be turned around to the athlete. Why play? Like, they have to have an answer for why they play, why they care. And usually with enough time to like think, there's reasons why they care and why they're playing, you know, oh, the team, or oh, like the feeling like you're part of something, or the hard work leading to some result, or whatever it might be. So knowing what you love about the sport. And then there's like, I don't know, there's just way more benefit than there is like cost. And there's a lot of cost for sure, but the benefits can far outweigh those if you really love what you're doing. And you don't have to love every part of it. Like, you don't have to love getting up at 6 a.m. to go lift weights or go sprint or whatever it is when everyone else is sleeping and they were out last night and you couldn't because you had to go to practice. Like, you don't have to love that, but you know that the process is part of the process and it's going to lead to the result that you've been trying to get towards like your entire career. So it's just knowing what your purpose is, and knowing like, I remember the best piece of advice I was given when I was graduating was, it was actually my dad's friend, oddly enough, is a scout for the Magic, which is cool. So I have this like connection, and I was talking to him about like, I don't know what to do. Oh my God, sports are done. I'm done. You know, it was like, woe is me kind of mindset. And he asked me one question, like, what is it about the sport that you love? Is it the strategy, like X's and O's? Is it like the physical, like labor of like going to the gym? Is it game time excitement? Because like, that can kind of shape what direction you go with the sport. Like if I love the X's and O strategies, I'd go into coaching. Sure. If I love the excitement of game day, same thing, get into coaching or like reffing or whatever. But I love the hard work and I love the process. I learned that about myself. So that's why I do that, because I help athletes through the process. So I found that love is what got me through. And like, I always say, like, being an athlete, like it's like the most evil science experiment ever, especially a college athlete. You're thrown in this like 4x4 room with cinder block walls, a stranger 4 feet away from you. You're eating new food in a calf. You're going to class every day. Your family's far from home. You're doing all your stuff on your own, and you're playing a sport. And everyone's like, okay, now succeed in every area. And it's like, whoa. And only the cream of the crop rise. And athletes don't realize, one, how much pressure they have and how much expectation is placed on them. They just feel it emotionally. They don't realize like what they're actually going through. So it's really such an amazing outcome to know that you can get through that kind of stuff. And the experiment leads to a stronger person. I'm kind of rambling now, but
no,
that's great
stuff right now. I think, yeah, like, and Jack could probably speak this too. Like the first time you fail when you play a college sport or high school sport, but definitely in college, you feel like a big time failure, and you're like, wow, because you build so much stuff into it, and you have all this expectation. So that's, yeah, and it's okay to do that, and you have a lot. You're going to fail a lot throughout your college career and feel bad and have a lot of bad losses and a lot of bad practices, but you got to find, I like what you said, like the practice, like no one likes going to practice, how repetitive it gets, hundreds and hundreds of practices, like in basketball and baseball. You got to find the good things in it. And we had talked a lot about, I think that if we interviewed and just asked, like, what do you miss most about your sport? Like a lot of it, like the love of it, but it's like the people, because you finish up your college sport, talk about being around like peers all the time, boom, you go work another job, you are suddenly not around people, your friends anymore. And that's like the biggest change. And what you miss is being around those people, and not only love for the game, but love for the people you were with. So that's like, those are all the things that I take away from what you just said there.
Yeah. So true.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think and we talk about it all the time. It's, why play? It's like, well, first of all, it's just, you just like the first thing you think about is just like you smile when you think about it. You're like, what do you mean why play? Like this, it's just so great, And I think a lot of the times, like, you just think about the good stuff, but it's like in those times of failure, it's like, I would have never experienced that through anything else. Sure. Maybe fail a test, or sure, maybe, I show up late to a class, but it's like, there's so much you get through your sport that, like you said, when you're so absorbed in it and you don't even know what's going on, what's happening to how it's molding you, how much effect it's really having on you, which I think is really cool. Cause then down the road, maybe it's post-college and something happens at work. You're like, oh, I've been here before. Or someone who maybe hasn't played a sport is like, oh my gosh, this is the first time I'm experiencing this.
I literally laugh at people sometimes. I'm like, you're stressed about this. Like, we're gonna get through it. We're okay. And it's also like, to kind of go back to what Ethan said about like the day in, day out grind part. Like no one, like I think of like a basketball season, like that winter break time. Like, it's like, oh my God, just like help me, because you're just practicing all day, maybe having a game. And I think of it as an opportunity. Like it's training your mind. Every moment is an opportunity to get an inch better, not even an inch, a millimeter better. And if athletes go onto the court, like I remember when I was an athlete, a lot of the verbiage from our coaches, like drop it at the door and like get better today. And I'm like, that is like cool, but like it's not helpful. Like I wish, looking back, my coach would just say like, hey, find an opportunity today. One opportunity. I am like really good now, finally, at like finding an opportunity in any obstacle. When COVID happened, I was like, yes, time to like talk with people and like be creative. Like you guys started a podcast. Like there are things you can do with the challenges. Just how do you approach the challenge? How do you respond to the challenge? So even in the grind, there's always room to have some sort of opportunity.
100%.
Yeah.
I'll always find the good and the bad. All right. Last question here.
Okay.
Looking back at Nicole circa 2008, is that about right? 9, about to go into college, in high school still. What advice are you giving her?
Ooh, okay. So one of the biggest things is try to be your best, not try to be the best. And I know that's like kind of controversial because you think of like the elite like performers of the world, like I'm trying to be the best. But when you're trying to be the best, you are relying on someone else's failure for you to be successful. That's bogus because you have no control in your hands. So focus on being your best, know what that looks like, and then aim to be that every day. And don't worry about stuff you can't control. Like at the end of the day, I can't control, like Ethan, if I want to be the best between us, I'm worrying more about you than me at this point because I'm hoping you fail so I could be better than you. That takes all of my attention off of me. I'm not in control of my own stuff because I'm focusing on yours. And then I'm relying on you to not do well. So advice would be your best, not be the best, and focus on what you can control.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's so important, especially with teammates competing for spots. Yeah, focus on yourself.
When you take your mind off of yourself, you're hurting yourself.
Right. Yeah. And I think it's true. Like you said, it's like, well, what does my best even look like? You know, and so many guys don't even know. I mean, even in pro ball, it's like, you know, one of the first assistants to the GM, he came in and had talked to us and he was like, what does your best even look like? You know, how can you be your best version of yourself? You know, and some guys were like, well, I guess, I mean, hit doubles, I guess, or if you're a home run, and, you know, and guys really start to think, it's like, okay, well, you know, what do I have to do to be my best? And it's crazy that it's some guys, it's pro ball and it's their second, third year. And they're like, oh, well, I guess I should probably think about that, you know?
And that's where like the skill of visualization comes in handy. Like use all of your senses and like actually see yourself in your mind being your best, you know, add that sensory detail because our brains have been shown in research that if you mentally experience something, it's just as powerful as if you physically legitimately experience it. That's why visualization actually works because your brain starts activating as if you've already done the thing, even if you never have. So it adds that familiarity, that repetition. So when you show up on the field or on the court or wherever you are for your sport, like you already feel like you've done it before. So you're prepared.
It's so funny because like no one even knows that. Like,
I know.
Like people are like, no, that's magic. No, that's science. Imagination, which is scientific terms like visualization, in sports and in all aspects of life. If people that do this, the best athletes in the world that have done it, it works. And like you said, they scan the brain. So it's a fact. So I'm happy we talked about that.
Yeah. Nicole, I think you'd have a heart attack if you came into professional sports and just realized how many people don't do it.
I'd be salivating. I'd be so excited because there's so much room for like improvement, which fascinates me and scares me at the same time. But it's like, that's again, another reason why COVID was like a good, and granted, I've had no health issues with this past year and a half. I know a lot of people have, but COVID gave athletes an opportunity. Like I remember in South Burlington, all the park hoops were pulled off. Do you remember that? And all the athletes that I work with are like texting or emailing me like, oh, I can't work on my game. I'm struggling. What a great opportunity to intentionally practice some mental skills.
Yeah.
Why don't you close your eyes and do all of your basketball stuff just without a basketball in your hand?
Yeah.
Visualize. See yourself being successful. Work on that now. So when you get on the court, you don't feel like you're rusty. You've already been doing it up here.
Right.
Maybe maybe some ball handling too.
That's great.
Of course.
Yeah. No.
I think there's been so many good things said on this podcast. Like I'm literally thinking of the clips right now of like all the good things that like student athletes can listen to from this. Nicole, we really appreciate coming on. I also got some girls basketball players that I work with. I might be setting up a Zoom with you sometime soon. Yeah. Maybe just having them sit down and listen to this episode. That might help. But it's so helpful to listen about the mental aspect of the game and just your whole experience.
Yeah. No, for sure. Nicole, I appreciate you coming on. And I think, like you said at the very end there, it's like, you know, if you want to be cream of the crop, you know, it's like, okay, you know, your skills take you so far, but it's like when you think, you know, you talked about guys like Kobe and MJ, it's like, well, what can I do to get even a little further ahead? And I think mental skills is just a way that you can just gain even a better edge.
Yeah. At some point you get to a place in your career where everyone has the good coaches, the strength programs, the fundamental drills. It's like, what's going to give you an edge? And this is definitely the trend that sports are heading. And I'm very, very happy to be in the field right now because it's going to blow up. I know it. I think colleges, before you know it, are going to mandate some mental health, mental performance staff. And I'm excited to see where sports go because it's going to be major.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Nicole, thank you so much for coming on.
You're welcome.
Thanks for tuning in to The Pickle, who is brought to you by AC4SA, academic coaching for student athletes, whose goal is to use the power of sport to unleash the athlete's potential in the academic arena.